Hey there, Fight Shank here with The Secret of the Unanswered Question. Well, originally this was just a list of questions people ask themselves, and it kind of occurred to me that it might make sense to give you some examples of this in practice. So here we go. Here are the questions illustrated with a couple of examples. So the whole concept of the unanswered question, of course, is that we've got a massively fragmented marketplace, which is a great opportunity, but at the same time a threat. And it's an opportunity because you now can compete with the big players, and you can do that because anyone out there can now find their perfect solution. The big players, whatever the Apples, the Amazons, the etc., they can't create a customized solution for every single customer or client, whereas the smaller players, they can adapt to the individual needs of their prospects. That's the opportunity. The threat at the same time is, well, your prospects basically demand a customized solution, or at least marketing that is customized to their personal needs. At the same time, there's a massive shift to one-on-one, as in personalized solutions and marketing, in the sense of, in the good old days, good old days, only at most a decade ago, everyone discovered mass marketing. Okay, now I can send my message out, I can spam people to death. And now the technology is there to start doing personalized solutions. So the simplest example you can think of is retargeting. When you go and visit a website, let's say even Amazon, and you look at a particular product, suddenly you notice everywhere you look, there are ads for the particular product you looked at. So this kind of the beginning of what is truly personalized in terms of marketing. Now, starting to look at what you're looking at. What they're not doing just yet is how you're making these decisions, how you come to the conclusion that you wanted the thing you looked at on Amazon. And that again is a great opportunity for smaller players who are nimble enough to adapt to the needs of the or the individual needs of the individual customer. Now, the big problem with all of this is that basically mass marketing as it's taught at the moment basically teaches good old style 10-year-old one size fits all marketing and solutions. This is how you in general, if you use a red font for a headline, people will respond, that kind of stuff. Well, true, some people may respond to red fonts, others prefer blue, whatever. And it goes to, the fundamental problem basically of the sort of mass marketing stuff that's been taught is that it's based on statistics. The assumption is you have hundreds, if not thousands of people coming to your website and then doing something, and you can test and measure the response. And you see, well, on average, 50% of people prefer blue and the other 50% prefer red. So now I can make some decisions on that. Well, two problems. Of course, no one likes to be a statistic. Like I said on the previous slide, everyone likes to be taken more seriously, if you like. Pay attention to my personal needs, otherwise I will go to someone who does. And of course, the other thing is that it's hard to get those numbers in micro niches. If you are doing high-end consulting, for example, you're not going to have thousands of people hit your website, and as a result, it's very hard to split test the effectiveness of a font color or the font you're using, or etc. etc. So what happens is then, as a result, that most marketers and most business owners add to the noise. They say, all right, mass marketing as it is feels kind of rubbish, but if I really want to stand out, I need to add to the whole thing. I need to use the latest techniques. That's basically what I mean here. So you then start looking for, hey, what's the latest trick for pop-ups? What's the latest trick for sales psychology used for headlines? What's the latest trick, this, that, and the other? And ultimately, that's adding to the problem. It's basically adding more to the noise, and it's basically doing more of what's already not working, instead of going to the fundamental question is, why is this mass marketing stuff broken, and what can we do about it? And that's exactly what this thing is about, the unanswered questions. End result of basically adding more to the noise is that it's increasingly hard and harder and harder to get attention and trust and keep it. I mean, you can always go out, and this would be an example of adding to the noise, show images of boobs and beer, and yes, people will be attracted to it, okay? It's hardwired. Beer is something we absolutely respond to, and as a result, people will pay attention to it. But then if you don't deliver beer, well, they're gonna 1 second, need to close that door. you're going to lose their attention because they go, well, I was here for free beer, and now you're telling them about business growth. I'm not that interested. The same goes for trust. You pull in people, and I'll give you a couple of examples later. You pull people in with big promises and hype, and basically it's the classic thing. The maturity of markets, as the markets mature, they're getting more and more sophisticated. So in the beginning, a simple claim would be, this beer, drink this beer and you'll get slim. And then after a while, everyone claims that, and you have to add more to it. It's like, drink this beer and you'll lose 7 pounds in 7 days. And then, after a while, everyone claims that. So you say, well, drink this beer and you'll lose 7 pounds in 1 day. And as you can see, at some point, you can't really go beyond the 7 pounds in 1 day. There's no such way, no way of increasing the hype without being completely, over the top that no one believes you anymore. And that is basically the big thing that's happening here. So the noise, the hype is ever increasing up to the point where people just go, well, that's bullshit. And as a result, it doesn't work anymore. Alrighty, so anyway, let's look at the solution then. This is basically, in a nutshell, in a very large nutshell, coconut shell, then what this is about. It's how to use unanswered questions to cut through the marketing noise, get your ideal prospects' attention and trust, and start having genuine conversations instead of uncomfortable sales presentations. So this is what we're aiming for. Having said that, what I'm showing you now, the questions we have here are basically to get from someone who's a cold prospect, who has never heard of you, who doesn't know you, doesn't know your brand, how to go from that being cold and unknown to trusting you, at least trusting you enough to either have a conversation with you or go through your marketing material or go through your sales presentation or whatever it is. It's not about the, once you have them in, let's say in a one-on-one conversation, what questions do they have? The biggest obstacle you have is always acquiring a new customer. And that's why we have this here, from cold to trust, from a total unknown to someone who trusts you enough to say, right, tell me more. So this is how you get just enough trust, in the sense of these are the questions that answer your prospect's question, why should I listen to you? So question number 1 is, what is the likelihood that my real problem is going to be solved for me, right? There is an underlying thing, and I'll give you an example in a second, that basically it is very tempting to go and appeal to everyone. And when you appeal to everyone, you don't speak to anyone. And this is basically the kind of thing that's happening here. If you put out content to attract customers or marketing messages that try to appeal to everyone, then your prospect is going or asking subconsciously quite often, not actively, what is the likelihood of my real problem being solved? And because you're so broad and so general, they go, well, this is probably not the one that's going to help me. Let me find someone who's more niched, who really can address that one issue. And of course, it's related to question number 2 is, do you understand my problem? There's that old saying, marketing saying, that if you can express the problem better than they can, your prospects can, you're ultimately, you're demonstrating such expertise that they're almost forced to listen to you. And that is really what's going on here. These first 2 questions hint at the fact that with all your marketing material, yes, it does pay off in spades to go and do some market research, to really understand what specific problem, and often it's an unvoiced problem, it's an underlying problem. What is it they're really facing? And can you then send out a message saying, I'm solving this one particular problem? Anyway, these are the questions prospects ask themselves subconsciously. Quite often, they don't explicitly say, is there a likelihood, or what is the likelihood you're going to solve my real problem, or do you understand my problem? It's just they look at your marketing material, they look at your content, whatever you're putting out there, and this is almost like a checklist they tick off. It's like, okay, if the likelihood is below X%, there's no point me investing any time in this, I'm off. And that's exactly what we're seeing in the marketplace. So question number 3 is then, of course, is this a good investment of my time? And related to that, is it a good investment of my energy and resources, and a good investment of my privacy? So these 3 are asked very, very early on. It's basically, is it worth checking out the promised solution? whatever your marketing material you're putting out there, either you're highlighting a pain point or you're promising a solution, something desirable, you're making a promise. And now they have to decide, well, is it worth investing all these things to go and check it out? Now, point number 4, the good investment of energy and resources, goes a little bit beyond that. It also looks at the actual solution, right? So there's a bit of a difference here between the presentation of the solution, basically, the sales presentation, if you like. So, you might be saying, look, give me your email address or pay attention to this webinar I have, and I'll explain to you what solution I have. And then if you want it, at the end, you can buy it. And that's basically, the actual solution is a little bit different, because you might sell and this is related to point number 4 here, you might sell a solution that is just not worth investing for them. Specifically, they might have a situation where it's just not worth investing their time and energy to actually implement that solution. So it might be worth checking out the presentation of the solution, but not the implementing the actual solution. So that's the difference between those two. So overall, what's happening is they quickly rattle off these questions here and check them off, or if they're not checked, they bounce off your presentation, whatever it is, off your ad, of your content, etc., etc. So if it doesn't look like it's a good investment of their time, of their energy and resources and their privacy, they're not going to go and sign up to your whatever it is. So from practical experience, or in practice, I'll give you an example. You might be tempted to put on a webinar. So you basically get people into your funnel, and let's say we use Facebook as an advertising platform. So in the good old days, it kind of worked, but these days, people are sophisticated enough, they're educated enough to go, right, or at the same time, they're overwhelmed enough with information that they go, look, I've never heard of you, and you're now asking me to basically set aside an hour of my time, which is more likely going to be 2 hours, including the Q&A, and it's most likely to be a thinly veiled sales presentation. So I'm not really going to go for it, all right? So if you are tempted to put on a 1-hour webinar, or even if if they don't have to schedule the time, but it's a 40-minute video, and trust me, I've been there, I've done that, yeah. I've put out great content, absolutely stellar content. Those who went through it absolutely loved it, got a lot of value out of it. But in general, 97% of people are going to look at this and go, well, a 1-hour slot of my time, since I don't know you, I don't have enough trust, not even a tiny bit of trust in you just yet, and that's why I'm not going to invest that time. That's the big juggling act that's going on here, right? You need to get them to the point, step by step, where they go, I now trust you enough to trust you with an hour of my time, or trust you enough with my privacy, basically my email address. I trust you enough to go and implement this because I truly feel I'm going to be rewarded in the sense I'm going to overcome my problem. Now, having said that, as a little side note, the whole thing with time, okay, so let's say you have a 1-hour webinar and you invite people to come to the webinar and most people bounce off. Now, in practice, what you might find is that a lot of people who do actually attend the webinar and go through it, or who watch the 40-minute video, whatever it is you're putting out there, are the ones who are truly committed to the cause. So there's a bit of a juggling act on there. And sadly, in practice, what you'll find is those who are truly committed, they're only about 1 to 3% of the population. Now, by putting out that 1-hour piece of solid content, or 50-minute or whatever it is, you're scaring away about 2/3 of people. I mean, there's always 1/3 of people who are genuinely not interested in what you have. But the 2/3, apart from the 1 to 3%, they're kind of scared off by the 1 hour. And, they're the ones we're really trying to capture here. And that is, although that is a topic for a future discussion, they're the ones who basically ask these questions here. Someone who's truly committed and says, goodness, this pain is so great in my life. I trust you. I just, I need to find a solution badly enough that I'm willing to invest an hour of my time. But the 2/3 out there who go, well, I need to weigh up between, the pain of wanting to solve this problem and trusting you enough. That's the ones we want to tackle with this here. So when they ask themselves, is this a good investment of my time? The answer is you need to make your content so easy to consume, so small that they go, yeah, awesome. That's what I absolutely want. Alrighty. Here's an example then. what I mentioned earlier. So what is the likelihood that my real problem will be solved? Look at this here. Okay, this is taken from a presentation someone else did, and it was basically trying to sell a webinar product. Now, in there they're saying, well, you'll double your sales of your current webinar, and if you have never done webinars before, you will have a template to follow. Right. Pretend for a second you are a successful business person running, built on webinars. What's going through your mind? You're going, well, if you've never done webinars before, you will have a template to follow. This is right at the beginning of a webinar. Now, I've trusted them enough to sign up to this webinar, and now I'm looking at a 2-hour presentation, which is most likely aimed at a lot of newbies, right? If you've never done webinars before, well, that's going to be basic stuff. That's not really solving my problem, because I'm a successful business person having built my business on webinars. I need very specific advice to add that little bit of extra, and that of course is far too complicated for complete beginners who've never done webinars before. And as a result, now at the back of my mind, this is not something people say out loud. This is what they're thinking internally. Go, I'm not sure. And of course, the same goes for a newbie who's going, well, all right, I've never done webinars before, but the assumption appears to be that, you can easily double sales, and trust, I've never done any sales with webinars. Is that really going to work for me? So, for complete newbie, I'm just freestyling here. A much better hook would have been if you've never done webinars, we're going to show you how to do your very first sale with webinars. And that would have been much more appealing to someone who's completely new to this. Here's another one about the whole investment of privacy, which is basically about trust. And when you get an email like this, I just highlighted by the way, there was a spelling mistake in the headline or subject line as well. This is an email from a company called SendReach. They do to make it super ironic, they do email marketing, right? They want me to sign up to basically trust them with sending out all my emails to others. And I'm thinking, you guys can't, you basically in the first couple of paragraphs, you've put 4 spelling mistakes plus a spelling mistake in the headline and the subject line. Am I going to trust you with my emails? No, absolutely not. If you can't spell, and this is not because I'm part of the spelling and grammar brigade or police. My wife is part of that, and it's very important to her that the spelling is correct, the grammar is correct, etc. I would have forgiven them the today's, the missing apostrophe, but all in all, look at this here. If you're getting this does this increase the trust in this company, especially when they want you to trust them with all your emails? The answer is no, absolutely not. Alrighty. So those questions we just had are basically getting to enough trust. It's all about you want prospects to trust you enough to take the first step and consume the first piece of content and go, yes, that's worth it, and then basically build on that ladder, get them to the bit where they go, right, now I'm okay, I trust you enough to do the actual sales presentation. The second part then, of course, is the solution. So, like I said earlier, one bit is getting them into the sales presentation. They need to, be engaged with that, but also the solution needs to be right for them. So, the couple of questions they ask subconsciously about the solution. The first one is, it's kind of obvious. Is this too good to be true? And it goes back to what I said at the beginning. There is a tendency in marketing, especially mass marketing, to basically hype up things simply because everything else has already been said. You can lose 20 pounds in 1 year. Great. 20 pounds in a month. 20 pounds in a day. At some point, it's like, okay, that's ridiculous. It's just not going to work. It's because they're exaggerating, because everything else has already been said in the marketplace. Right? So that question is going to pop into your prospects' minds. And if they've seen too many claims that don't work and too many sales presentations which basically were over the top, you're not going to get very far. So, but more importantly, around this specific solution is, can I do it? Am I actually able to do this? Do I have the pieces in place to do what you are suggesting? Is it practical? Is it practical for me? Can I actually fit this in? How long is it going to take? So these kind of questions do pop into your prospects' minds. If you go out and say, look, and by the way, this is there's no value attached to this. This is neither good or bad. You can use this in both ways. You can use it in a way where you say, look, I'm now putting this in place to actively reject anyone who's not in a position to use my solution. And I'll show you this in a second. It's all about making sure people who basically come in and they buy your thing or sign up to your thing, they can actually get results. So you want to put this up front as openly as possible to say, look, if you are, let's say you want to be I just need to make something up. Say you want to be a racing driver. You teach people how to be a racing driver. Now, if someone is half blind and they don't want to wear glasses, they're not in a position to be a racing driver. Okay? It's just not going to happen. Or if they're afraid of high speeds, it's just not going to happen. In order to be a racing driver, you need to love speed and you need to have great vision. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to go around the racing course. And so rather than say, do a presentation, we'll show you why being a racing driver is such a great thing, and you're going to be able to pull girls, and you're going to get free champagne at the end of races, and it's all wonderful. And then at the very end, you go, oh, by the way, you can't really do this or at worst, you might get them into the program, they sign up, and then it turns out, oh, look, there are all these obstacles. I didn't know I needed to, have great vision. I didn't know I need to love speed. Why are you only telling me now? So that's the worst case scenario. And you will have seen this in practice. I mean, I've signed up to really expensive coaching programs where it then turns out, where they just go, oh, by the way, it's really easy. You do this, that, and then the other. And I have no background in this particular specific example was Facebook advertising. I'd never done Facebook advertising before. And it's like, right, so in addition to all the moving parts of the new system you're teaching me, I now need to go and figure out Facebook advertising, and boom, instant overwhelm. So, going back to this, the solution will require some prerequisites, if you like, and you want to make them upfront as open as possible so people can answer these questions for themselves as early as possible. Can I do it? Am I in a position to do this? Are all the pieces in place for me to be able to do it and get results? Because think back to what this whole thing is about. It's all about them overcoming some obstacle, right? That's why they've come to you. They want to overcome an obstacle. And if it turns out, well, they can't really overcome it because there's so many other pieces that are not in place, you're doing them a great service by saying, okay, by the way, my solution is not for you because of A, B, and C. Okay, but even subconsciously, they will be asking these questions. Can I do it? Is it practical? How long is it going to take? And what you see in practice, many people who abuse marketing basically then use bonuses and scarcity and all that crap to persuade people, to hit them over the head. Oh, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. You can do it. Of course you can do it. Just because they want to make the sale. Please don't do that. Alrighty. So these are questions around the solution. Then, super powerful and something that is basically not being done at all in the marketplace at the moment. And I guarantee when you start doing this, it'll make a massive difference to your marketing. It's basically all about personality types, different informational needs. I'll give you a very quick story to illustrate what this is about. My wife and I went to on a short holiday in the south of France. We stayed at a friend's place, and behind my friend's place is a little forest, which happens to have a disused railway track in it, where the actual iron bits, the railway has been removed, but the bed of the track, it's now a sort of gravel path that goes in a big circle. It's wonderful for going for walks. So we went for a walk, and we came to a disused, obviously, railway tunnel. Now, the unusual thing about this railway tunnel is it bends. It bends sufficiently that when you go inside, you don't see the end until you get around to just about to the middle. So at some point, whichever way you turn, you don't see anything. It's completely black, but you can't see the front or the end. You need to go a bit further. And the way you go through it is basically you pick up a stick and you walk along, you hold it against the wall. You hear the sort of scratching of the stick against the wall. Now we get there, and to me this is super exciting. It is such a cool experience to walk through this tunnel, and just stand in complete darkness, knowing it's kind of safe. Other people have gone through this before me, and they all survived. Well, there was no sweet stench coming from the tunnel, so obviously they've all survived. Now my wife is wired in a very different way. For her, it's super important to know upfront exactly what is going to happen. So, what happens if we trip in the tunnel? What happens if our stick breaks off? And this has nothing to do with being scared or chicken or something like that. Not at all. Different people are wired in a different way. For me, it is almost like inbuilt that I want to figure out things as I go along. So, it's easy. We just move along and we go figure it out. Now, the figuring out bit includes, for example, when you walk through this tunnel, they've got these service entrances on the side. There's no light coming into them, but it's basically big holes. They must be about 2.5, 3 meters wide. So whilst you're walking along, suddenly there's no noise because there's a big gap in the wall. To me that's exciting, because now you kind of need to walk a little bit more carefully until you hit the next wall and go, all right, yeah, we're ready to go again. To my wife, this is the ultimate nightmare. Yeah, what are you going to do? It's like, what if there's a big gap, and what if you fall down? All that kind of stuff. All these things that are unanswered. So that explains, or is the one example of how different personality types have very, very different informational needs. For me, I'll figure it out as I go along. For her is, I need to know upfront exactly step by step what is going to happen, what are all the things that might go wrong, and how are we going to deal with them. Again, it has nothing to do with being scared or anything. It's just how she is hardwired. And there are many, many people in the world who are hardwired that way. So, and that kind of highlights why we ask these questions. Or each personality type has underlying, driving, core questions. If you fail to answer those questions, you're not going to get anywhere. All right? So, there you go. Is it safe? Is this whole thing safe? I'll give you an example. A colleague of mine, a friend of mine, approached me the other day and said, our company, we want to do social media, but the the management, they're not quite sure if they're going to move forward, because they are not sure what's going to happen if people start leaving negative feedback on social media. That's a real concern for them. And so that is basically the overriding question for them. This whole social media thing doesn't appear to be a platform where we are in control, where we can make sure we are not affected by negative feedback. So until someone comes along and explains to them that social media is actually safe, and it's not the flame wars of the good old days in the forums, it's actually something where when you deal with fallout in the proper way, it's totally safe. But until someone does that, to them social media is unsafe, and as a result they will not go and do social media. Here's the one that is very important to me. Does it restrict my freedom? So if you're presenting a piece of content, a marketing piece, a product, a solution, whatever, that severely restricts someone's freedom, and you're talking to someone who's very interested in freedom, it's not going to fly with them. So the underlying questions, although the same person is not going to ask all these questions, it's very, very useful to have these in mind when you design your marketing pieces. And your content, the way you deliver it. So there's another way of looking at the world is, does it leverage my authority and expertise? Is this something where people trust me because I am an authority? For some people that is really, really important. Now if you go, well, anyone can do this, and you can even do this in your underwear, they're going to go, I'm not sure. I don't think this is right for me. My view of the world is that I've worked hard to get my certifications and my diplomas, and I'm now an expert and authority, and you're presenting something that can be done by anyone. I don't think that's for me. In a way, slightly related to the does it restrict my freedom, you have the is it disruptive or novel? Is this something that has not been done over and over again? For me, for example, I love cycling. Absolutely love cycling. It's I've done it for decades now. We'll do it until I can't cycle anymore. And at the same time, I hate training on the same routes over and over again. And it's probably one of the reasons why I never fulfilled my potential when it comes to athletic performance on the bicycle, because I just can't stick to a routine. It just bores me stiff. I've had colleagues who, they do the same loop over and over again and measure how they're getting faster and faster, and they're doing their intervals. And in winter, they sit on an indoor trainer and just pound away indoor miles. It bores me stiff. And that is basically something you need to take into account. Some people need to have novelty in their lives. If you say this is we'll give you the greatest routine, and you just do this a million times and you'll be world class at whatever it is you're teaching, they're going to go, oh, sorry, but I'm going to have to shoot myself. I mean, really the question is this requiring me to do training on an indoor trainer? That would be for me. Turned around, if you were to present something to me where you go, well, by the way, this gives you absolute freedom. It's so novel. The way it's done, you never do the same routine ever again, and you never have to sit on an indoor trainer. Well, I'm all ears. The next one is there passion in this? Does it leverage my passion? This comes from the people who love what they're doing. They like doing stuff in a fun way, in a lighthearted way. Their question is there passion in this, in the sense of, can I bring my passion into this? Because really that's all I care about. And at the same time, can I be passionate about it, and in the sense of being authentic and have fun, and is it full of laughter, and attract people who get the passion, who buy into the passion? If not, if this is routine stuff, if it's accounting, well, sorry, it's just not going to happen. Alrighty, so oops, I just moved the screen here accidentally. No. Moving back. No, okay, well, there you go. Right. Does it make a difference? This is basically the... another way of saying this is, with this thing you're telling me about, will I take care of my clients, of my tribe, of my environment better than others, better than before? Am I making a difference in a more profound way than before? Right? That's the core question for a particular kind of group, if you like. So if you say, look, you've got a novel thing and it's super disruptive, but really it makes no difference. It's just because it's pure novelty, they're not interested. It could be as safe as you like, but if it makes no difference, sorry, it's not very effective for that particular group. And the last one is it simple and efficient? So one particular group of people looks at this, and the first question is this simple and efficient? If it's not simple, if it's complicated, too many moving bits, I mean, you can turn this around. A lot of people are so focused on, is it simple and efficient? And they like improving things, right? But ultimately, that's an overriding question. Is it either simple or efficient, or can it be made simple and efficient and give me a simple and efficient solution? That's the core thing. Alrighty. So these are the personality types. And like I said, hardly anyone is doing this. And not, sadly, this is, it's human nature. These are the kind of questions people ask. And if you don't address those questions, you're missing out big time, because they are subconscious questions. Hardly anyone is aware of this kind of thing. And you kind of, it's a binary decision. They look at this and go, this looks, for example, the freedom thing. If it's a fixed system and I can't bring my own creativity to the table, I'm sorry, it's not of interest. I'm out of here. So the last one then is the last category. So what we've had so far is basically the from trust to, or from no trust, from cold to just enough trust. Then the solution-oriented stuff, which was, can I do it? Do I have the resources, etc. Then via the personality types to finally sales psychology. This is classic mass marketing, and of course there are some questions in there, especially because it's taught all the time. You must use scarcity, you must use etc. etc. So the one question I think related to scarcity, to urgency, that kind of thing, is, am I going to miss out? Everyone is going to ask themselves that, and I'm mentioning this here because I'd like you to use it in a way where you get them to take a tiny leap of faith. And what I mean by this is, at the beginning of the cold relationship. They don't know you. They don't know if it's worth investing their time. You basically have a stalemate. It's very hard. At some point, someone has to take the first step. And because your prospects are in charge, they decide if they're going to invest their time and energy. They're the ones who take the first step. I mean, it's not like you have someone in a room and say, read this or I'm going to slap you. They can tune out anytime they like. So they have to take that tiny leap of faith. And that is basically where you can use a tiny bit of sales psychology, in the sense of you're going to miss out if you're not doing this here. And just to illustrate, how powerful scarcity and urgency is, the other day Amazon sent me a promotional email, something like, 5 Blu-ray DVDs or Blu-rays for €30. And before you know it, I was on Amazon browsing DVDs, although I had no real need for any Blu-rays. We have enough Blu-rays. But there you go. It is extremely powerful. It is hardwired even at when you're really, really young. Urgency and scarcity always works. And the example of me being, I was 6 years old. I could barely read. I had just started school, and there was a poster of basically some bank, I think it was, and they had some special deal, some interest rate thing going up at the end of the year. And I remember to this day running home. I could just barely decipher the text. I had no idea what it meant. And I ran home to my mom, look, quick, you need to check it out. They're raising their interest rate at the end of the year. That is how hardwired this urgency and scarcity stuff is. But like I said, in most cases, it's used in in a mass marketing way to get people to take a step they don't really want to take. So what I'd like you to do is, if you use sales psychology in the sense of scarcity and urgency, do it so your prospects can take that tiny leap of faith. I'll give you a couple of examples of bonus and bribes to attend and stay in your presentation in a second. The only thing I want to say right now is basically you want to give them everything they need as soon as possible. That's what I said earlier when I mentioned the racing driver example. Okay, don't wait until it's you've had them sit through a 1 hour presentation and say, oh, by the way, you can't really take advantage of my offer if you don't have fulfill these criteria, or even worse, get them to buy. And then you tell them, or you don't even tell them. They just find out for themselves. Oh man, I can't even do this because all this other stuff is missing. All right. So don't use bonuses, don't use bribes to get them to stick to your sales presentations. It's the equivalent of, if you had a live presentation, of locking the door. I mean, yes, they can tune out, they can leave because it's easy to leave the computer, but it's the equivalent in the sense of you're now using dodgy sales psychology, using bonuses, etc., just to get them to stick around. I'll give you examples in a second. All right. And of course, with sales psychology, super, super important. Think back to the beginning of this presentation. The idea was that people come in and you want to build trust. You want to go from cold to trusting you enough to check out your sales presentation. So if you start using sales psychology where you don't stick to your word, where you use fake sales psychology, urgency and scarcity, you're losing that trust faster than you're building it. So there's no point doing it. So here are a couple of examples then of the application in marketing to that first bit of trust. Alrighty, after spending a couple of minutes shutting up my daughters screeching at each other down outside, let's go back to application in marketing to first bit of trust. Alrighty, so, hang on, where are we going? The way you do it in practice is you deliver tiny bits of one problem, one solution to begin with. Give them some content and don't put a barrier in front of it. You basically want people to have an opportunity to go and check it out, right? Think about all the questions. Is this worth my while? Is it worth my privacy? Is it worth my while? Now, if I have to go and put in my email address, I have to then possibly confirm my email address, go to my inbox. That's already taking time. I could be doing something else. I then have to go load a possibly slow loading page, blah, 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 blah. Okay, that's a lot of time. If they don't know you and they're not quite sure, is it worth their while? Is this really going to solve my problem? They're already gone. So you're much better off having one tiny, here's the problem, here's the solution, go check it out. And you deliver that thing without any barriers. Here it is, go check it out. It could be any form. Could be a short YouTube video. It could be a blog post. It could be anything. Anything. A white paper. Go download it. Grab this. It could be a what are they called? A podcast, etc., etc. But keep it as short as possible. At this point, it's not about impressing them. It's about answering their questions. And the questions are, is it worth my while? What the questions I've shown you earlier are almost in sequential order. The ones at the top you want to answer first. Is it worth investing my time? At some point, it's going to be, all right, it looks like it's worth investing my time. Now let me answer or get answers to the next questions, which is, should I trust this person? Are they in a position to deliver a solution? Do they have the answer to my solution? That kind of thing. But the first thing is am I going to invest that tiny bit of time? So initially, tiny bits of problem, tiny solutions, ideally, of course, impactful. I'm not saying make it a useless solution, but make it something that's really, really impactful. So they immediately see, okay, it's worth investing my time. Also make sure, of course, to respect their individual needs. If it's all about safety and security, no matter how impactful, let's use the social media marketing example, no matter how impactful and to the point your thing, if they at the back of their minds think, well, social media is not safe because I have no control, well, they're not going to check out your thing now, no matter how good it is. So you need to address those issues up front. Even in the copy that sells them on checking out something without any barriers, it's going to be super impactful in only 1 minute of their time. If they deep down think it's not safe, or if it's restrictive, or it doesn't allow them to live with passion or be impactful, they're not going to go check it out. So I initially said this whole presentation is about getting them to that tiny bit of trust. It's enough trust so you can get them to a sales presentation. I'm going to give you just a couple of points here, what you do afterwards. Okay, it's a whole other discussion. You can join one of our webinars where we show you what the next step is once you have people in there, how you then have that next step, the sales presentation, etc. But here's a couple of points then. And they're examples from someone else's presentation. And this is here one of the slides I showed very early on. It's the same presentation I mentioned earlier. If I promise to give you great content, do I have your permission to take 10 minutes to give you a great offer for you to consider? If that sounds fair, type yes in the chat. Now, this is actually doing a couple of things. It's doing an evil sales psychology trick. I don't know if you spot it. It should be pretty obvious. It's the get them on the yes train. If you get people saying yes over and over again, at the end they're going to go and say yes to whatever you have. And that's exactly what they're doing here. In general, it's, you would say, well, it's kind of fair, isn't it? I give you great content and then I'll do just 10 minutes, which is, by the way, it's short, it's to the point, it's respecting my time. But of course, it's first of all exploiting that dodgy, commitment and consistency things like, yes, of course, yes, and then get them on the yes train and thank you very much. So the second thing is, and I put this in here because it illustrates what's wrong with mass marketing, is there's an underlying belief that because I give you great content, I now deserve the opportunity to give you a pitch. And this, under the conditions I showed you in the beginning, with an ever more fractured market where people demand to be given individualized, personalized solutions and marketing, this no longer holds true, right? I've given you good stuff and now I deserve to be given an opportunity to give you a great pitch. Forget it. It's just not happening. There's something else wrong with this, and that basically is that you kind of drag people through the great content and then get them to the pitch. Now, wouldn't it be much better if you had a situation where people get answers to their questions up front and go, ooh, I really want to hear your pitch. Okay. Now, in general, the content, the one here, is not structured that way. I mean, I've actually gone through that presentation. It's not structured that way. Now, this was part of a 2-hour webinar, and a lot of people will not have been on there, or the wrong kinds of clients would have been on there, because it didn't answer those questions. All the questions we've covered beforehand. Okay? A lot of those questions you want to cover beforehand, because now you have a situation where you have a sales presentation which is effectively, this thing here is a 2-hour sales presentation, which allegedly is only 10 minutes at the end, but really it's a 2-hour thing where they attempt to impress the socks off you and highlight your incredible pain of not making tons of money and doubling your sales very, very easily. So all in all, the idea of one is tied to the other, that I give you great content and then I'm entitled to give you a pitch, is A is no longer there, and B, it's wrong. Okay, don't do it that way. If you answer the questions I've given you above, then you've already earned the right, not the right. Then you have a situation where people are keen to hear your pitch. They've come to you because they have a problem. They want that problem solved. So why would they sit through a impress the socks off me presentation if they already know they want your thing? That's the key thing, right? So the purpose of all the questions up front is to basically remove all obstacles. And I'm not saying that in the sense of objection handling. It's to help them understand for themselves that, yes, this pitch is probably worth attending, because I see that for myself, I'm in a position to take advantage of it, and I trust you to help me solve my problem. So why suffer through 1 hour and 50 of great content just to see 10 minutes of pitch? No, give me the pitch now. Please tell me what you've got. Righty. So basically, this whole thing can be summarized then in one sentence. Your content or your marketing has one purpose, and that is to give your prospects an opportunity to convince themselves that what you have is right for them, not persuading them. Because it's not true if you're doing dodgy mass marketing. If you're selling widgets to the masses, and you've got thousands and thousands of people hitting your website, and you don't really care about them as human beings, and they're just numbers in the sense of statistics, then fine, go and then your job actually is to persuade them to buy as much as possible. If you're doing mass marketing in the sense of you're not doing individualized, personalized follow-up because there's high value in that thing. So, but if you have something where it's of high value, where it's transformational, then you need to give your prospects an opportunity to convince themselves that what you have is right for them. And you do that by helping them answer those questions up front. And by the way, none of this is a persuasion tool, right? At each point, it should be, all right, this is for you or it's not for you. And there are no hard feelings if it's not for you. So if you create a product which is all about freedom, and you are, because your style is figuring out things as you go along. I don't care if the tunnel has holes in it. We'll figure it out as we go along. If that's your style and that's how you do things, well, you should tell people up front, because those who are extremely detail-oriented, extremely step-by-step, and they need to know up front everything, every single step, in order to feel safe, it would be doing them a disservice by saying, oh, this is for you as well, right? So there are no hard feelings. In fact, it's the opposite. By being respectful of their needs up front, by answering those questions or helping them answer those questions for themselves, you're saying, oh, look, I cannot be of service to you because what I'm delivering is probably not a good fit for you. And as a result, you create massive goodwill. That is how you create massive goodwill, by showing people that, not only instead of persuading them, by showing them if it's good for them or if it's not good for them. Alrighty, so a couple of more examples then. There was one thing, the webinar I refer to here, this thing here, right, had the title 51 tips for increasing, or 51 secrets for increasing webinar conversions, something along those lines, okay? I kind of highlight that because if you are tempted to impress people, impress the socks off people by putting out stellar content, here are 51 tips. Now, you need to be aware of that can help you establish you as an authority, as someone who knows what they're doing. And it has a wonderful wow factor, something people like, the wow, the thought factor. But the fact is, no one is going to read those 51 tips. unless you are in a very specific position. You get one of the 1 to 3% who's actually in a position, has webinars, has a business built on webinars, and now wants to improve, make little tweaks to their webinars. Fine, they'll read it, but the majority of people will not read it, okay? And that, of course, is a missed opportunity for you to, or for them to convince themselves that what you've got is the right thing for them, right? The only thing you're doing with 51 tips, like I said, is you get them to the point where they go, well, they probably know their stuff. So I'm highlighting that because I'd like you to almost adopt a mindset shift where you go from, I'm going to impress the socks off my prospects so much that they're going to go and buy my stuff. Instead, go over to the point where you give them opportunities to convince themselves that what you've got is the right thing for them, or not. Where they go, well, it's probably not for me, and as a result, build massive goodwill because you're truly being respectful of their needs. So this is the final example then, again from said webinar presentation, and this is how not to do it. The first free Apple Watch will be given now, and then one will be after the Q&A. So as you can see, this is an example of where they basically use greed to get people to sign up to the webinar and then get them to stick to the end, right? I'm highlighting this for two reasons. It's one reason. It's two examples of the same reason. The first one is the signing up bit, right? If you need bribes to get people to your content, and this kind of summarizes the whole presentation now, if you need bribes to get people to your presentation, it means you haven't answered those questions beforehand. That you now need to use inbuilt scarcity, you need to use inbuilt sales psychology to basically persuade them, to beg them, to hit them over the head that they come to your thing. They're not coming because they're absolutely convinced, all the questions have been answered. They know deep down, this is the right thing for me. That's not why they're coming. They're coming because, well, there's a good chance of them winning an Apple Watch. Now, once they're in there, now they have to sit through 2 hours, where at the end, they may or may not find out if what you've got is right for them. Your job should really be to answer those questions up front or as early as possible. But no, what these guys are doing is basically get you to stick around to the sales pitch. So it's basically a bribe to stick around to the sales pitch, and then hopefully you'll buy something. And guess what? That sales pitch is full of bonuses, price stacking, price drops, scarcity, urgency. Most of it fake, incidentally. These guys are doing, the countdown timer on my webpage, and the next day it refreshes to 24 hours. Absolutely ridiculous. Alrighty, there you go. So that is in a rather large nutshell, an explanation of what the stuff or the questions you found in the graph or the PDF, how they work in practice, and why they are so incredibly powerful. Now, also goes to show, I've given this presentation to my list who know, like, and trust me, and as a result, it was very easy to get them to consume 53 minutes of content. If I were to put this out into the wild and say, here's some awesome content that's really going to revolutionize your marketing, no one, hardly anyone, would go through it. 53 minutes? Are you nuts? No way. Okay, I'm not going to do it. That's why we, at the front end, we have a little PDF. Okay, I can look at the PDF, I can convince myself, oh, this looks like interesting stuff. 4 different categories of questions people appear to be asking themselves, and it can really make a big difference to their mindset, the value you provide, and also how you differentiate yourself in the marketplace, and stop using mass marketing. Alrighty, so here's an example of how you could break this down. Simply take the PDF, stick it on the front end, give it away. People immediately see for themselves, oh, looks interesting, and then give them this rather long presentation of 54 minutes. Alrighty, as usual, if you have any questions, just let me know. Cheers.